There is a book called Atomic Habits written by James Clear that tells you how to create new habits that are useful in your everyday life. However, for this video, I'm going to talk about how those principles can be applied to learning a language no matter what level you're at. I'm James, I'm a native English person. I can speak Spanish and Italian, and I have 13 years of language learning experience. Number one, reduce the amount of effort it takes to start doing the thing. So basically, reduce the activation energy. And that means that something that takes a long time or a lot of effort to do to get started, you're less likely to do it as a habit. Think about something like brushing your teeth. You do that every single morning because it's part of your lifestyle. On the other hand, there's many things that you should be doing or you might want to do, but they take too much effort to get going. Maybe it's going to the gym, maybe it's getting up really early in the morning. That takes a lot of energy. Or it could be, in terms of language learning, telling yourself that you'll sit down to study grammar or write a list of grammatical things. That takes a lot of energy or thinking to get going. So the solution is to make every language learning activity that you do as easy as possible. For example, you could tell yourself, right, I'm going to read this book in Spanish now, or I'm going to watch this Netflix show, but I'll just do 2 minutes. The 2 minute rule is really good because it tells yourself, look, I won't do it for long, I'll just do 2 minutes. And I bet you most of the time you'll spend more than 2 minutes. But it's that mindset that you'll just do a little bit, you'll just do the 2 minutes, that reduces the friction and means that you're more likely to actually start doing it. The next one is called habit stacking. Now, this is where you have an existing habit in your life, but then you stack it with something else related to language learning. For example, if every morning you drive to work and it takes you half an hour, maybe in the car, or you commute and you're on the train or something, or on the metro, and it takes you half an hour, normally, you might be listening to the news or something in English if you're an English person. However, what you can do instead is listen to a podcast or radio or something in your target language. So ultimately, if you want to add a language learning activity into your life, the best way of making it stick and forming a habit in the future is to attach it to something else, another habit that you already do in your life. Next, think about your identity. So this is a bit more profound, but basically, if you think of yourself as someone who does that thing, for example, if you go to the gym and you do a lot of sport, you might think of yourself and your internal voices are, I am sporty. Well, it works the same way in habits. So a lot of habits that we do are based around our identity. For example, many people who practice languages think of themselves as a language learner. However, the incorrect framing around this is to say, I am someone who's fluent, because that's very subjective. And if you don't believe it yourself, it doesn't really work. But for me, for example, I'm English and I can speak Spanish and Italian. I think of myself as someone who's practicing languages. I don't put a status on how good I am at any language. I just know myself internally that, oh, I am a language learner. Therefore, this habit that I'm doing, which is opening a language app or listening to the podcast in my target language, that sits more naturally with how I see myself, my identity. And if you see yourself as someone who learns languages too, then it'll be easier to implement habits around that as well. Next one is make the habit obvious. The more obvious something is, this is where it comes down to like your environment. If you're in an area where you can have easy access to maybe a cheat sheet of different Spanish phrases, if that's what you're learning, or on your desktop or on your phone, it's something where on your home screen, it's language learning related. The more obvious something is to you in your day-to-day life, the more likely you are to actually do it, or it will trigger you to think, actually, I need to study Spanish because I'm going on holiday in a few weeks' time and I can see it in front of me, so it makes it easier to actually do rather than just put off. Even something as simple as bookmarking maybe your TV show on Netflix is in Spanish or your target language on your computer, so that when you click Netflix, you go straight to that TV show. So really, you're designing your environment so that language practice is the default. You default to doing the thing you want to. Next, make it attractive. So this might sound weird, but if you do something that you enjoy, you're more likely to do it. For example, if I'm into kickboxing and karting, and I'm trying to study Italian, then the best thing for me to do is set it up so I'm watching or consuming content or doing something related to either kickboxing or karting, while also incorporating some sort of Italian into that. Maybe I'm watching a vlogger or someone in Italy doing kickboxing. Basically, the more enjoyable your language learning activity is, the more likely you are to continue and repeat it over time. Next is never miss a day twice. Now, obviously, we all have illnesses and things happen, or maybe a day's absolutely packed of 23 hours in a day, and you just got 1 hour and you're absolutely knackered and you miss your language learning practice. That's fine, but never do that twice. And it's because missing 2 sessions starts a habit of not practicing. You might relate, if you used to go to the gym or you do a lot of physical exercise, then at one morning or one point you might say, actually, no, I'll leave it for now. Then that might carry on to another day. So basically, you've set your threshold a bit lower every time you say that to yourself. But it's okay to miss once, just don't do it twice, because no one can be absolutely completely consistent every single day. But as long as you do one little thing the next day, like even 2 minutes on a language app, you've told your brain, you've told yourself, look, I'm not going to stop this habit. I can miss one day, but not another one. And the goal here is that long-term consistency beats perfection. A quick one on this. If you're looking to get conversational in a different language and you can't quite get there at the moment, I've written a free 5-day email course that's sent to your inbox every single day over the next 5 days. It tells you exactly how to reach a conversational level in your target language based on my 13 years of experience of language learning. So it's very, very condensed into, takes about 1 minute per email to read, and it's free. And I've created it because many people seem to freeze up when they're speaking in conversations. So that helps with that. Anyway, I'll put a link in the description and also in the first comment. Finally, you should think in terms of systems rather than goals. So instead of thinking, I want to get fluent, think in terms of, oh, I want to practice this language X amount of times per week when I'm doing this, when I'm doing that. It's a repeatable system that can be done every single week, and that aligns with your routine. Now, for this to work, your routine doesn't have to be set in stone. You could be a nurse or someone on shift work, but it means that whenever you do something, for example, you might have a break at work, you do 10 minutes using your favorite language app. Or it might be when you're commuting to work, you listen to half an hour of a podcast, 100% spoken in your target language. That sort of thing, really. So you integrate these things into your life rather than saying, right, my goal is to get fluent. Because if you say that, it's hard to identify what does fluent mean. How will you know when you've hit it? And when creating goals, it's always better to have many little goals like, oh, I just did 2 weeks straight of listening to podcasts every single day. That's brilliant. That's a goal. Rather than thinking, right, when am I fluent? And psychologically, it's much easier to digest and accept the fact that you're doing a bit at a time rather than thinking, I want to get fluent in this target language and not seeing results for ages. Because really, fluency is a byproduct of having a system in place and being consistent enough for a long period of time to get good at your target language. Anyway, that is it for today. See you later.